everybody, I'm Eric the Counselor.
And I'm Des Perry.
This is a lifestyle show
About improving your mental health.
You ready?
Let's experience mental health. All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Experience Mental Health Podcast. I am your host, Des Perry.
And I'm the other host, Eric the Counselor.
The other host.
Yes, I'm feeling good today. It's been a great day. Good things are coming to me today. Good things are coming to you. Good things are coming to you. And everybody else behind the camera.
What good things are coming to you today, Eric? Tell us about it.
The thing about, I'm just putting out positive affirmation.
Right.
Like,
but
I'm
you just
saying
know.
it. And so after I say it, I just expect it. So
I
go through the rest of my day expecting something good, you know.
All right, but if you could choose, what's one good thing you would want to come to you
one
today?
Good thing, you know, I would definitely appreciate a check for $1 million.
Won't we all?
Yes,
won't we all?
That. You know, anything good. It could be anything. It could be a good thought, a phone call from a friend I hadn't talked to. My son not crying tonight when he goes to bed. You know, anything,
I know you be on that.
Goodness, you know, I count it all joy. You know what I'm saying? And so, really, if you're listening or watching this, you know, you should tell yourself good things are coming and expect it. And then at the end of the day, like, write down all the goodness that came to you, whatever it might be. And what that does, it puts you in a mindset of gratefulness because you become grateful for the goodness that came. Because most of us are focusing on our problems. You know, if I ask most people, tell me the problems, we can go on and on and on and on about the problems, right? Then I'll say, well, tell me about some things you're grateful for. And we all have, not all, but we'll pause and have to think like, And some people say nothing or I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, you're sitting here, you're breathing, you're
Come
alive.
on now.
I would count
that.
that
I
as
got clothes on my back. You know I ate today.
Yeah. So that's a little freebie for y'all. You know, expect good things to come to you. Yeah. And it will. It will. It's the law of attraction.
Yep.
It's a mindset thing.
Yep.
So we got a great show lined up today.
Oh, for sure.
I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all this one might be a tearjerker. I'm going to just go ahead and set it up that way.
Dang.
It is. I mean, we're going to be talking with our guest, Precious, today. And she's going to be telling us about her story of dealing with her husband who committed suicide in 2007. And so that's why I prefaced the show that way. Precious comes to us. She's one of the listeners of the show. She has a background as a public speaker. She talks about domestic violence, sexual assault. Tell us just a little. Well, first tell us about you, and then kind of go into the work that you've done, and then we'll talk about your experiences as it relates to your mental health, dealing with what happened to you and your family. And then we'll set it up that way.
Okay, awesome.
So Precious,
first of all, thanks so much for having me.
Yes,
I'm super excited to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Excited for you to be here as well.
We're good on the volume. Everything good. Cool.
Okay, awesome.
We want to make
Are you directing the show on the show?
Stop it. We'll make
Stop
sure
it.
we
You talking about me all the time.
We got to hear every word of this. Okay, we got to hear it all.
Got you.
Well, my name is Precious Creavalle. I am a Nashville native. I'm a mother of two.
Hold on, you say you're a Nashville native. What high school you go to?
I went to, I graduated from Procon.
Okay.
I started at Hillwood. Yeah, I started Hillwood. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I started at Hume Fogg, and you know this. But I graduated from Hunters Lane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
Well, I started at Overton.
Where's Overton?
Got expelled from Overton. I went to several other schools and came back and graduated from Overton. Don't judge me.
Too late. Too late.
Full circle.
So we got all Nashvilleians
in the building. Yeah.
So tell us about your work as a public speaker and the things that you talk about.
Okay, awesome. So I first started public speaking as a teenager. I was working with a program that used to be in Nashville called Crediton Services. Okay, and they served, haven't heard of that one. Okay, let me tell you about it. Yeah. So it was a wonderful program, and it served people who were, early parents, teenage mothers. Okay, and I was a teen mom. So I got involved with the program, and I started there speaking out to help other people understand, hey, this is not fun, becoming a parent at a young age. We talked about safe sex. We talked about abstinence as an option. We talked about date rape. All of those things. We got really graphic. We really got into it, and we'd go around to schools talking to our peers. We also did I had an opportunity to speak in front of the legislator and talk about the child support laws and how those affect teen moms.
As a teenager?
So, as a teenager.
You were talking about child support laws?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
well, that's amazing.
That was awesome, and I loved it. So then I continued.
Well, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like at a young age, what made you want to get so involved in that type of public speaking? And, you know, 'cause I'm thinking about myself as a teenager. I don't know, you know, if I would be able to put myself out in the forefront like that. So what, you know. Yeah.
Well, I have to be honest. I have to say I was inspired by my mom. Yeah. Yeah. My mom is here today.
She's going to start crying. Look at her. She got her attention.
My mom has just always been like a fighter and very involved in the community. She actually started a domestic violence shelter when I was 15 years old. That was for women of color in the community. And she was already working at some domestic violence shelters, and she was noticing how the experience was different for us when we came into the shelter, and how much more likely those differences made for the women to leave that shelter and go back into the abusive situation. So she decided to start a shelter. That's what she did. So for me, and that was, you know, just inspired by personal experience. She's vocal about that and still doing that kind of work today. So nationally, internationally. So
are you into that work still?
I'm not in that, not in that respect so far as domestic violence. I actually have kind of been silent for a long time just due to things that were happening in my life. But at this point, it's important for me to, you know, to speak out about mental health.
So let's go right into it. You know, you've been through things in your life. We're going to talk about your husband.
Yes.
So I'll just give it to you. Tell us the story of what happened, as much as you'd like to share. Tell us your journey along the way. Tell us the struggles you had afterwards, and tell us about how you've been able to find healing and, you know, move on from.
Awesome.
Such a tragic
and
thing.
I'm looking forward to answering questions you guys have. I just want y'all to know that I'm like really, you know, open about talking about it, because I know it's, you know, going to help a lot of people, and that's my goal. I want to start the conversation. Is the only way I can talk about this is with compassion. You know, that's really my message, is compassion. You know, I want to share pictures.
So those of you who are listening, she's looking, you can't see this, of course, but she's got some pictures of her husband.
I've got pictures that, you know, to just share with you guys. This is a picture of us on our wedding day.
Okay.
This is the "You May Kiss the Bride" moment. And also a picture of him holding our daughter the day that she was born.
Look at that smile.
Yeah, biggest smile he's ever had in his life.
And I mean, having a baby girl, that puts a big smile on your face.
And he wanted a daughter. He wanted a daughter so bad. He was just like, you know.
Relate to that smile, definitely.
Absolutely. And, you know, he also was just, you know, a very caring person. And I always just kind of chuckle when I see this picture, because he's gained a lot of weight with me while I was pregnant. Just the whole sympathy weight thing.
Pregnancy weight.
That was cool. And then I just brought another picture of us together about maybe a year to a year and a half before he passed. So I just think it's important
when did you get married?
Well, we got married in 1999. No, I'm sorry, 1999. 1999, because my daughter was born 2000. So 1999, we got married. So, I just wanted to say, you know, that I thought it was important for me to bring pictures because I just want to humanize mental health and give it a face, you know, with his story and my own story. And I just think that's so important. I also think it's important to speak his name. His name was Brian Creavalle.
Brian Creavalle.
So tell us about, like, you all's marriage, like, in the beginning. Like, just tell us, like, what type of person he was and, you know, you all's relationship. I like to hear some of that.
Great place to start. So Brian was a very, very caring man. The most caring man that I've ever known. Brian was, he loved to laugh. He loved to cook. He was actually, was a chef at on White Bridge Road, J. Alexander.
Okay.
And that was, his dream, to be a chef. Of course, he wanted to go further with that. He was the type of person that would like physically care for me when I was sick, just like bathe me, give me medicine. And he was from the islands, and he actually like did something one day. I don't know. Something was burning. That's all I know. It was a sage or something. But he just like really took care of me, and like I didn't get sick again for like 2 years. Like it was like crazy. So he also he was also a hard worker. That was something that I really admired about him. He worked 2 jobs. Just like I don't want you to do anything. He just really, really took really good care of me. Very loving person. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when I hear about him and me being a therapist, I know sometimes, we have the outward appearance of things are okay.
Yeah.
But we're struggling internally.
Yes.
And so, just I guess maybe I should just let you continue to tell the story, and then we'll get what we.
Well, I mean, I just for a second want to address what you said too, and I think that's super important because we do have this thing in our society where like the accepted thing is to give the face that everything's okay, right? Like you run into somebody, whether it's on the street or at work, and you say, "Hey, how are you?" The accepted answer is what?
I'm good.
I'm okay. I'm right. I'm all right.
Exactly. Straight. And most of the time we're doing that and not even making eye contact with each other, and
it's just real quick. It's real quick. Just keep moving.
Right. Right. And nobody's stopping and saying, how are you? Yeah. How are you really? And listening for an answer. I just think that's one major thing that we could do to change, in our society to really help. But yeah, so I'll give the like crash course. Like, I don't want to make it a super long story. I know we're limited on time, but he actually, was a really loving person, and he just throughout the course of our marriage became mentally ill. Looking back at it now, I can see that he had some challenges before we even got together. It just wasn't obvious. It wasn't apparent. At that time. So just over a course of years, I just kind of watched him, he deteriorated, and it took a lot of different forms. He became like abusive. I just have to say that. It would like, lash out and like be threatening towards me, be threatening towards himself. And he, at one point, he would be like on and off of like using different substances. And, that was really, tough and a major, just a major challenge as well. And I don't know, he would just, go through these spells of just being really down, being, really depressed. Yeah. So, there, were times our relation when we went a long period without being together, and we got back together. The picture that I show is actually of our second marriage. Okay, so we remarried, and he, at one point during our second marriage, about a year before he passed, we parted ways. We were separated, still legally married, but separated. And that's important to say because he kind of took up with someone else. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know like how serious it was until really like the end, really. But he, it was in one of his phases where he was like lashing out at me. And it was, he'd go back and forth. Like 1 week he could call and we'd be fine, because of course we were still co-parenting. My children at the time that we separated would have been 11 and 6, or 11 and 5. And, so we still had to co-parent. So we talked to each other quite often. And some days he could call me, everything be fine. We kind of laugh and joke. We had gotten to a point where beyond, any type of romantic aspect of a relationship, we're like, brother and sister, because we had been through like a lot together, So we were still co-parenting, and we'd have good days, and then like out of the blue he could call me and just go completely off, like, I hate you, I hate the day I met you, just just out of nowhere. And I'd be like, how could you say that? We have our daughter, if we hadn't met, we wouldn't have our daughter. And that would kind of be like, our daughter was like a touchstone for him. Like, I could say that and it would like bring him down, like kind of help de-escalate him and kind of bring him back to reality, So
were there any mental health diagnoses that he received, or did he ever go for
Well, good question. So just before we separated, I'm so glad you brought that up. Just before we separated, I had just made like a huge move to help him, or kind of encourage him to get help. I had noticed that he was like going back into this phase of like talking about hurting himself. And years before, when he did that, the next step was him like threatening me. I was like, we can't do this. We're not going back there. So I was really concerned about him. So I called a therapist and I said, we need couples therapy. And we made an appointment. But by the time we actually got to couples therapy, that's when he had kind of started like being threatened toward himself, saying he was going to hurt himself. And so we got there that day, and the therapist, she says, hey, tell me what you guys came in today. Tell me what's going on with you. And I said, don't worry about that. He's talking about hurting himself. Right. Go, do your therapize him, do your thing. Therapize him. Help him. So, right, just forget about me, So the whole Blake Shelton thing, like, so she did, she went right into action with him, and she talked to him, and she actually got him to open up because he was shocked, right? So I think that kind of, the surprise factor kind of worked in my favor, to get him to open up. And immediately he went right back to some things that happened. He was 8 years old. He had lost his grandparents who raised him. And they had been, from what he told me, they, how it is, like when older people, they've been married like 60 years and one dies, so the other one dies right behind each other. That's what happened. So he went right back to that and how hurt he was. And he just really opened up and talked to her. And that day I was like, yes, good. He's opening up. Yes, I was right there, like how we're sitting here. And I was just so glad that he was opening up. And I was just like, really thankful to her and just like, babe, you did good. I'm so glad, that you got that stuff out. Please continue. So she had encouraged him to come back. I had already like set it up so where we could, come back, or he could come back by himself, however it needed to happen. And
now, quick question. So during this time, are y'all separated, or y'all?
At that time, we were still together. This was just before we separated.
Gotcha.
So he wouldn't continue with her. Unfortunately, he chose not to. So I was like, man, I was upset. I was scared, for him. I was concerned about him, concerned for myself, because in the past when he went from talking about himself to, being threatening toward me, I'd actually stayed in a shelter at one point, just because it just was not safe for us to be with him because he had gotten that, like out there. Yeah. So, anyway, at that point, I was just like, can't do that again. So I called his family, which I wasn't close to at all. But I called them. I called an aunt of his, and I said, hey, I really, want you guys to know that, Brian is talking about hurting himself. You know, he really needs you guys. In just a minute, y'all are going to be all he has because I've got to get me and my kids to safety. You know, I've got to make sure that we're okay, you know. And she did. She followed up with him. She did a great job. She went into action as well. Another, like, angel, you know, on his behalf. Got him in touch with a therapist in the local area, someone that she knew. And he spoke to her, from what I understand, he spoke to her once and did not follow up then either. So we separated, and just fast forward a year later, we separated just before Christmas. And a year later, fast forward to just around Christmas, around that time, he was apparently very involved with someone else. I didn't know to what extent. But he was still, because it had only been a year and our kids were young, he was still helping financially at home. But this, you know, think about that, like a lot of people wouldn't, or would have had to been like taken to court or something like that. He was not like that. You know, he just, on a monthly basis, would give me the help that I needed. And that was our agreement until I could get on my feet and get, at the time I was studying for a cosmetology license. Okay. So we're going deep.
Tell us about it.
So, this is, and again, I'm only telling the facts. And I think, I pray that I did like a great job of just telling like how good of a person he was, because we're going to talk a bit about some of the things that were not fun, things that happened that weren't great.
It sounds like along the way there were signs that, all right, this is getting out of control.
Yes.
There were opportunities for him to get help.
Yes.
At least twice.
Yes.
Right. And it was somewhat beneficial, but however, it wasn't sustained.
Right.
So then at some point the two of you separated.
Yes.
Okay. So bring us from the parts from where you were separated up until where, you know, he completed suicide.
We're going there right now. So this incident that I'm going to tell you about was like maybe a month before, and then I'll tell you what happened at the time, because it was significant. There was an incident where I came, you know, up to his job. He said, come down here, you know, I'm just going to give you this money real quick. And I was in the car, my kids were in the back of the car, in the back seat. And I came, and like we had done many times before, he was just, you know, to give me the money. This is like, you know, bill money and stuff like that. And he took the money and threw it on the ground and just started berating me. Just, you know, look at you, you're pathetic. You know, what would you do without me? You know, you would be nothing without me. You know, like literally saying those things to me. And I was just like taken aback, because he had like never talked like that before. You know, he like gets out there, but it just wasn't like that. And I was like, wow, you know, and then especially with our kids being there. Right. And normally when he would like do stuff, it would just be like our private little hell between us. You know, he would like only not do things when other people are around, you know. So I was just stunned, and I looked at him. I looked at my kids, and I looked at the money. Yes, they were in the back seat, and I looked at the money, and I was like, I have to pick it up. You know what I'm saying? This is rent. Right. This is light bill. You know what I mean? It's essentials for our life. So I picked the money up. I got into my car, and as I'm starting to pull off, he's just walking beside the car, like just continuing, you know, to just be very, very abusive. And I'm just saying, you know, you wouldn't be anything without me, you know, you're pathetic and things of that nature. And I had my window down, and I said, you know what? I said, you know, I'll be fine without you. You know, right now you're just a vessel that God is using to bless me. But without you, I'll be fine.
This is what you had the mental awareness to say in that moment?
This is what I said in that moment.
Because I probably think of some different words to say.
Let me tell you.
Right.
In a moment like
I'm not the type of person that's like going to give you like a good cussing, but I'm also like not the type of person that's like witty. Yeah. And I'll be thinking later, like practice. I should have said
right. You be after the face, like,
exactly.
I
wish I should have said that. But somehow I don't know why in that moment I just had the clarity to say that to him. And again, either the kids were always a touchstone, but also I could talk to him about God. Our faith was something that we shared, and that would kind of be another thing to kind of bring him back to reality. When I said that to him, he looked stunned, and I pulled off and I cried all the way home, and I was just like, ooh, God, let me be away from this situation. Let me not need him. I can't live like this. My kids can't see me like this, just bring this to an end for me. And I'm also a person that believes in listening after prayer. So I listened, and that's what went on the rest of my way home. So fast forward a month later, he calls me and he says, bring me my daughter. Okay, I'm at work. I'm in the salon. I'm at work. I have my license at this point. And I stopped, and normally I would just stop whatever, and I would take him our daughter, because I did not want him to stop having a relationship with her. He at this time had kind of discarded my son, who he had raised my son, but he's not my son's biological father. But he was the only one my son considered a dad, but he at this point had discarded my son and only kind of acknowledged my daughter, and I didn't want him to stop having a relationship with her. So but due to that prayer, the answer I felt I had gotten from that prayer, I did not respond that way. My answer that I felt I got to that prayer was just focus on your hair business. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right, just build your clientele, So that day I was at work, and I responded like I had never responded before. I said, she's at Boys and Girls Club and I'm at work. I don't know what to tell you. The very next thing out of his mouth was, I'm going to kill myself. He said, tell my kids I love them. I'm going to kill myself, And I said, Brian, and I'm thinking in my mind, honestly, I'm thinking, here we go again. You know what I mean? God, here we go. I've heard this before, and I don't know whether to take him serious or, if he's just doing this to get a rise out of me like he would do sometimes.
Did you feel like that's what he was doing, trying to get a rise out of you?
At first, yes. At first, yeah. And, but even though I thought that, I still was like, let me just try to respond appropriately just in case, it's serious. Right. So I said, Brian, your daughter needs you. We weren't at a point in our relationship where I could have said, but I love you, and all that, and he would have went for it. That wouldn't have, no.
Yeah.
But you knew that his daughter was something that,
Always, right? So I said, Brian, your daughter really needs you, what would she do without you? What about our daughter? And he paused. He says, I effed up. I effed up this morning. I really effed up. He's like, I'm just going to kill myself. And as I was trying to think about how to respond, I heard a female voice in the background, like screaming. Okay. I won't go into what she said, but that scream made me think, wait a minute. Once again, he normally only does things when it's just us. And because of me knowing about domestic violence and my training with domestic violence, I knew that this is escalation. This is what's called escalation. When a person normally is only abusive privately, and then suddenly, we're making other people aware of it, that is a sign that it's getting worse. So I knew, something's going on, right, So I said, is that so-and-so? I said his girlfriend's name. And he said, what? I said, is that her? Let me speak to her. And I only wanted to tell her, girl, get it together. The only way that I had survived with him when he got crazy like that with me was by being calm.
Yeah.
Being very, very calm. There was a point he would, when we had separated before and I stayed in the shelter, he would tell me, I'm gonna kill you. I dreamed. He told me one time, I dreamed that you were cheating on me and that I stabbed you 87 times, and at that time he was sleeping next to me with a knife under his pillow, My response was like, man, shut up. I don't want to hear that, just right. If you're going to stab me, dang, why are you talking about it, and that would be my only defense, because I was terrified, but I wasn't going to let him know I was terrified. Somehow something in me knew that he needed my fear, whatever it was in him that was driving him to do that. I felt like it needed my fear to feed off of.
Yeah. Maybe control, power over a person.
Yeah.
When someone fears you, it gives you a sense of control.
I want to say that that's a part of it, but again, just sticking with the theme of humanizing the face of mental illness, Brian had a tape in his mind, a scenario. I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill myself. And he would say it in different scenarios all the time, early, before we separated the first time. He would say that, but it was enough for me to know that he has this scenario in his mind. Right. And in order for that to happen, for me to play my role in that scenario, I have to be afraid. I've got to scream, right? I've got to be, you're about to kill me. And I wasn't willing to do that, So that was just instinct. So that was all I was planning to tell her in that moment was, listen, you got to stay calm. Right. This is how you get through this. You know what I mean? And she was younger. I had only seen her once before, but I knew that she was younger. And she had just this sweetness and innocence about her, like I had when we first got together. I was only 18 when we met. And so when I said, is that her? Let me speak to her. He hung up the phone. Okay. So at that point, I'm like, oh man, it really is something, something's happening over there. I've got to do something. So I call my mom, and I tell her real quick. I give her the real quick rundown. I have my client. I put my client under the dryer. All ladies out there, you know what that means. Me too. I know what that means. You know what that means. Yeah. So she did. She had locks, by the way. One of my favorite clients ever. Yeah. Put her under the dryer. Call my mom, and I'm like, Mom, yada, real quick. Here's what's going on. She already is familiar with what happened in the past when his patterns were kind of getting like that. So I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I don't want to call the police, but I do want to do something. He needs to know he can't play like this. If he's playing, he needs to know he can't play like this. Serious. But I didn't want to call the police because I was afraid he could get hurt, and I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want anything to happen to make it worse, And by this time, y'all, I've jumped in my car and I've started heading towards him. Yeah. Okay. So I'm on the interstate. Yeah. I'm coming from Antioch to West Nashville.
Oh yeah, you got a good little distance.
Good little, So.
But traffic wasn't bad back then, so you probably got there
about
about 15
minutes. Thank you.
Right now, it'll be about 40 minutes before you get
good 45 minutes. So I was so frustrated and afraid that I did call the police at this point because I'm like, I just don't even know who else to call. So I called the police. I explained the situation. And at this point, there's no reason to think that he has a weapon, right? So I just, explained history of, yada, yada. I think the situation's kind of escalated. I think they may be having a fight or argument, like a domestic violence situation. So I'm heading there, and they're like, where is it? And I'm like, I don't know, but I can show you. And he was like, fine. That was fine for him. So I met them at a gas station that was across an empty field from their house. Okay, so there's gas station, empty field.
Yeah.
What I'm now calling their house. At the time, I knew it to be his house. So I'm like, that's it. That's the house right there. And they're like, okay, just kind of stay back. So I did. They go up to the house. I kind of stay back. I'm parked right across the street, like in this empty field or lot or whatever. And I see there's 2 police officers, and they go to the front door and they knock on the front door, and there's no answer. So they go around the side to the side door and they knock on the side door. There's no answer. They go back to the front and knock, and then they come back to the side. And I see them go in. So I'm thinking, I'm on the phone with my mom at that point. And I was like, oh, he let them in, And about a minute later, the cops just come running back out to the side porch, and they're vomiting. They're just vomiting all over the side porch. And I was like, I'm seeing it. My mind was not processing exactly what's happening. I just knew something was terribly wrong. I'm like, something's wrong. I couldn't think of what. So next thing I know, there's like 13 cop cars on the block, just all around the house. They're going in, they run out. And I'm thinking, Mom, what's happening? Yeah, I'm just describing to her what I see, almost like I'm telling her. It feels like I'm watching a movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm describing to her what's happening, but I'm not processing what's happening at this point. I see a coroner's van come and an ambulance, okay? I see the paramedics get out the back of the ambulance with the defibrillators, the paddles, but they're walking really slow. And somewhere in my mind, I remember that I heard that they're required to try to bring somebody back to life before they pronounce them dead or something like that.
They have to at least attempt to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So when I saw them with the defibrillators, which brings someone back to life, but they're walking really slow, then I knew that they were dead.
So we're talking about a murder-suicide?
A murder-suicide.
Wow.
A murder-suicide.
Wow.
And I was on the phone with my mom, and I said, Mom, they're dead. They're dead. I know they're dead. And Mom was already, I think at this point she was on the phone, like booking a flight, like trying to get it down here. She was in Maryland. She lived in Maryland. So she's like, I'm on the way. She's like, just stay on the phone with me. Just keep talking to me. I'm booking a flight. I'm listening. She's trying to like be with me and trying to, make arrangements to get here. And I'm just like in shock, At some point, a police officer comes to my car, and I roll down the window, and I'm just looking at him, and he starts to ask me questions. And I'm like, what's going on? Are they okay? Are they dead? Are they dead? And he's like, ma'am, I have to ask you these questions before I give you any information. He's like, I'm sorry. I will say he was compassionate. He was like, I'm sorry. I know this is extremely difficult, but I have to ask you these questions before I give you any information. So I'm like, I'm trying to be with him and answer these questions. And the only question I really remember was him saying, do you know him to own a gun? Do you know Brian to own a gun? I said, I haven't seen Brian with a gun since, like years and years, years ago. I had not seen him with a gun for several years. I had seen him with a gun before, but it was years ago.
Younger days.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, no, I haven't seen him with the weapon. I don't know, I don't know him to own a weapon. And he then told me, that he said that apparently Brian had killed his girlfriend earlier in the day, and that he then, killed himself, and that apparently, she'd been dead for a few hours, and he'd been trying to figure out what to do, or, I later found out later in that day that he had, called some other people, called some friends, and, tried to figure out what to do, like kind of like weighing out his options. Before and after is what I was told. Of course, I don't know for a fact. I do now know that the female I heard in the background was not her. She was already deceased at that time.
So someone else had been there and left.
So she was screaming, I guess, to see her.
She saw.
Wow.
Yeah, but based on what I heard on the phone, that more matches up
with what he said, because you said
with what that person
effed up.
Yes, what he said, he said he'd effed up that morning, and with what the person I heard in the background saying, it's more suitable to a reaction to seeing something like that than it wouldn't make sense if that was the girlfriend. That's not the type of thing you would say if someone was trying to kill you.
And so he wanted you to bring your daughter
over there. That's why I was just thinking, like, whoa.
Right.
Whoa.
So that's why I had to start with that part of the story, because what if I hadn't prayed that prayer? What if I hadn't listened for that answer? Yeah, I would have dropped everything and brought him to her.
Like you normally would.
I normally do.
Oh, man. Wow.
Yeah. So I have to, it's hard for me to picture him hurting her, but I cannot ignore, the memories of him always telling me that he was going to kill me and kill himself. So in the hours and days after this incident, it was, I had so many emotions, but one of the emotions that I felt was shock, disbelief, that it was someone else that killed, instead of me, and I literally would have like these visions, like of a bullet in her head with my name on it, and it was just horrible, there were so many different feelings. I can remember feeling like guilt because someone lost their daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. She was a few years younger than us, and I know she had no clue what she was getting into. That registered with me through it's like this kind of haze that you go into when something traumatic like that happens, but that feeling registered. Another feeling that registered was relief. And for a long time, it was hard for me to say that, that amidst or underneath the grief and the shock and the, there was also relief. Because of all the things that we had been through leading up to that point, and I knew that one of us was gonna die. And I at times felt this is not going to end without one of us dying. He also had done things that made me wish for him to die. So that was, again, guilt, that I actually wished that someone would die and they did. That was horrible. But that was a feeling that registered. Another feeling that registered, you can probably relate to this just as a therapist, I felt jealousy. I don't know.
Yeah. That's not something that I've.
Well, then we're going into some new territory then. So I'm going to tell you why. I felt, and when I allowed myself to feel the feeling, I was like, wow, I knew that it was abnormal for me to feel that way, but I still felt it. I felt, who is she to you to bring that type of emotion out of you?
Oh, I see.
I gave you a child. You know what I'm saying? So I knew it was a bizarre thought. I knew it was a bizarre emotion. Yeah. But it was an emotion that came up for me. It was what it was. Yeah. You know?
So let's we're getting close to the end of time. We actually have ran over, but we're going to keep it. I want to talk to us about the process of healing. Like, how did this affect you, and then how did you deal with it to get to where you are today, to where you can just talk about it?
Well, being that, like you said, we're almost out of time, I'll give you a brief. I went through years of not, I acknowledged as much as I was able to acknowledge it and deal with it at that time. Within 2 weeks, though, I had to go back to work. My kids had to go back to school. Yeah. You know, my mom had to go home. You know, I had to move forward with life. You know. So I to my knowledge at the time, I felt like I was dealing with it, and I did get to a point back then where I could talk about it. You know, for just I got through several years of raising my kids and dealing with the best that we could. One thing I did for them was just made sure it was something we could always talk about. I didn't ever want to feel in our household this is something we could not bring up and talk about,
That's good.
And made sure that they got some help as well.
Yeah.
For myself, I was not aware that I was burying some of it. And it really came up for me again in a whole new way when my daughter, who is my youngest, left home. She graduated high school and left home. So leading up to that time, which was a really big time in her life, as it would come up for me in different ways on new levels when things would happen in her life or in their lives where I feel like he should have been there. You know.
If you don't mind me asking, what were their ages?
At the time that he passed, she was just about to turn 7.
Okay.
And my son was 12.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so then once she graduated and left home, then things kind of hit me in a whole new way because all that time I had just been surviving and doing what I needed to do for my kids to make sure I'm providing for them, to make sure I'm giving a stable environment for them, trying to give them as close to a normal childhood as possible after this. So then I was just left with me when they were gone, So I went through a whole nother thing. And that has been over the last year. And the best way that I can summarize it is just to say that, started off dealing with it and then stuffing the rest, Now, I've had to turn and face it. I've had to turn and face it, that bit that I was not dealing with,
Did you go about this on your own, or did you seek therapy?
I did do another round of therapy because that therapist that had helped us at the time, I kept seeing her, by the way, for years. Yes, I kept seeing her. Yes. And that was huge. Good. I'm glad you said that. That was huge.
Some people try to go at these things alone.
Woo! No. See, I saw him do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I wasn't going to do that, So she gave me so many coping skills. Yeah. I love her. Her name is Maxine Schaefer.
What was your favorite
She's
one
amazing.
that she gave you for coping skills?
Oh, man. I'll just say this. This is really deep.
I did.
No, this is a good one because we went really, really deep, One thing that she taught me in the years, I had nightmares about it, after he passed, I'd have nightmares that, he was trying to kill me, and just, really graphic stuff, just really, really graphic stuff.
That's to be expected from that type of trauma.
Yes, people exactly.
Nightmares,
and what I was experiencing, exactly. What
recurring thoughts, all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I was experiencing was PTSD. Yeah. Didn't know it. Right. Had a
classic symptoms.
Classic symptoms. I had a long journey with it. Got misdiagnosed,
what were you diagnosed with before that?
With bipolar disorder. And it was my therapist, Maxine, who was like, nah, because you're raising 2 kids, you're working 2 jobs, you went back to school full time, you're doing all this on your own, you're too stable for bipolar. Right. So, but it was PTSD. So, but the coolest coping skill that she gave me, she taught me about lucid dreaming. And she took me from having these nightmares that he was trying to kill me to, it changed to me confronting him. She taught me how to confront him in my dreams. In the dream. What? Yes, I had to. Yeah. Years had gone by. I tried everything. I tried calling detectives and asking to see pictures of his body and stuff like that. I mean, anything to try to make my mind accept that he was gone, Wow. But she taught me how to confront him in the dream and say, why did you do that? That was awful. Why did you kill her? Why did you kill yourself? You left me, with these children and, just really, turning, confronting him in the dreams. To the next phase that she got me to was just being able to say to him in my dreams, I'm really sorry that things turned out this way for us, and to make peace with him in my dreams. And on up to, like, even after I stopped seeing her, I already had that skill on how to, like, work with it, in my sleep. And now, I'll say now, to fast forward to now, I still do have dreams periodically, only when things are like chaotic in my life. I'll start dreaming about him, and that's my sign that I need to start taking care of myself and, getting back on my regimen. And, but now, my most recent thing was, I actually had a dream where we were just back in the early stages of our relationship and back like in love like that again, like laughing and talking. And it was so, these are all like really strong, like powerful dreams, like you feel like you're there. But it was so strong that like I woke up and I cried because I was like, oh, I really miss him. I miss that. I was able to acknowledge that, And that was great because even though it made me sad, it's like another stage of healing, and this is another stage of healing, me being able to talk about this and being able to talk about mental health. I didn't get to talk about mental health first aid, but doing these things, starting to speak out about it and wanting to help other people and teach other people about mental health, that is another phase of my healing too. This is me turning facing it. This is me running right at it,
Before the show today, as we were talking about you coming in, and we had a real discussion, like, this is therapeutic not only for the listeners but for the person that's coming in. And I shared a story about I lost my sister and how I was able to heal from hearing another person talk about their pain. And so you're right, this is therapeutic. This is not only helpful for the people listening and watching, but I know that this is helpful for you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we know that.
Right.
And so we're grateful that you
for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Share
that story.
Before we finish, like, what would you say to a person who might be experiencing some of the things that you noticed early on in your relationship? You said there was issues before you got married, and there was things that were going on while you were married. What would you tell to a person, male or a female, or transgender, whoever? What would you tell to a person, that might be experiencing some of the things that you did?
Well, my first instinct is to like say all the stuff, like the protocol type of stuff, like call for help, call a suicide hotline, even if it's not you that's suicidal, get get online, read, if this is, your partner or someone that you're close to that's going through this, educate yourself, find out, how to help them.
Know what the signs are, really.
Know what the signs are. That's part of what I want to start doing locally and around the country, is teaching people what's called mental health first aid, which is talking someone down from a mental health crisis. If you have opportunity to take those classes, please do. But the average person doesn't. Won't have that opportunity and would be like me and not, really educated about mental health, even though I was educated about a lot of stuff. I was educated about domestic violence and was still experiencing domestic violence,
Right.
And that's a good point, it doesn't exempt you from going through life. I'm a therapist, but I have a counselor.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So having a knowledge base doesn't exempt you from the thing that you
not at all, because
about.
Life still happens, right?
Yeah.
So, though I had to say there wasn't any physical abuse, there was emotional, psychological abuse. I couldn't stop him from relating to me the way he did when he was in his illness, So, all I would say is trust your gut. Trust your gut. Because it was my instinct that got me through. It was my instinct that told me, to, when to be really, compassionate with him and try to get him help. It was my instinct that told me when to not let him know that I was afraid, so I could survive the night, those type of things, trust your gut, no matter how it looks to anybody else.
Yeah. Well, look, once again, Precious, thank you so much for sharing that story. Like, look, my mind is blown right now. Just like,
thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's just the feeling, just to see your strength here and be able to still be able to share that story, because like you said, that's very traumatizing to go through that type of situation. And look, as you tell it, I'm glued in. Like, you would have thought. We watching, a movie. I'm like, what happened next? You sitting in the car. I felt like I was in the car with you, but no, I think that you did an awesome job telling that story and then being able to still be compassionate for him, because we all understand that, whatever he was going through at that time, may not have been, him. Right. It could have been, it's really this illness that, he was dealing with at the time. And so there was still like this loving, caring, compassionate person still within him, so
absolutely.
Definitely appreciated you for sharing that.
Is there, can people call you or contact you? Maybe someone might want to interview you or have you come out?
Absolutely. My email address is pcreavalle@yahoo.com.
We're going to drop that. We're going to drop it in the link.
It's a common name. It's PCREA, V as in Victor, ALLE @yahoo.com. So, and thank you for the link as well. Email me. I definitely want to be out sharing my story. I definitely want to be out sharing mental health first aid. I am certified currently as a mental health first aider, and I'm going to be training very, very soon to become an instructor and teach other people to be mental health first aiders.
Which is awesome.
So, so I want to use my story to help promote that and just teach people facts about mental health and to be more compassionate.
I think it's awesome.
Thank you
so much. If anybody wants to get in touch with Precious, be sure to do so. Sometimes our listeners, they will just send us a message on social media or something about one of the guests. And if anyone does, we'll make sure to put them in touch with you and get that message to.
For sure.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, man. That was phenomenal.
Folks, be sure to subscribe. EMH to 31996. You'll be able to get this episode and every other episode that we do. All right.
All right.
Make it a great day.
I was going to say, make it a great day, folks.
Next time. Yo, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please like, comment, and share this with all of your friends. And also be sure to subscribe and then go check out some of our past episodes. Make it a great day.